Wander Wealthy Podcast, episode 129 with Jenay Rose. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of the Wander Wealthy Podcast. My name is Tess. I'm the host of this show, wealth and mindset coach and founder of Wander Wealthy, a place for fellow online service-based business owners to get their daily, or I guess weekly dose of money mindset, practical money talk, and even business talk and business strategy and all of that good stuff. I like to bring fellow business owners in the same online service-based space to come and talk about business, talk about their mindset, and talk about their growth journey, as well as share a little bit more about their money story, because this is a conversation we need to be having more. We need to normalize more. We need to create less taboo around the conversation and the money talk. So that's what Wander Wealthy is for. Today, I am joined by Jenay Rose, a.k.a. Namaste Jenay. She is your aligned, no-holds-barred spiritual business bestie, known for mixing the woo and the do. Gosh, I personally love and resonate with that so much. She is supporting heart-centered women in starting and scaling their own online businesses. Every day, she guides 80,000 plus women on Instagram alone to reach their potential, cultivate their gifts, and lead a life of fulfillment and abundance. You guys, this interview was so much fun. Jenay actually reached out to me on Instagram, and she rocks that Instagram world. She responds to literally every comment, and her posts are always so fun and helpful and motivating, and she's just crushing it over there. So as you're listening to this episode, go ahead, take a screenshot, go over to Instagram, put it up on your story, and tag Jenay at Namaste Jenay and me at Tess_Wicks, and I for sure will definitely be shouting you out, give you a little love, and I'm sure she will too, because she crushes it. In today's episode, we get to know Jenay a little bit more. She shares her story, and it was a winding road, and so we really dive into talking about the pivot and how in such a short amount of time, she's built this thriving business and just kind of followed where her intuition was leading her, and that was pivoting along the way. And so I asked her lots of questions about how she was able to pivot while bringing her Instagram followers and the audience she had built with her and seeing the fallout from that, but also realigning with new people that want to join her ride and so much more. I think this episode falls at such a critical time, especially for me and my business. I've been sharing on Instagram lately about my own journey going through a pivot and have asked you guys what your experience has been and what maybe big change or pivot you're trying to make, and allowing all of us to know that it is safe for us to change our mind. It's safe for us to pivot. It's safe for us to do something that feels so much more in alignment with the people that we want to serve. So this podcast episode just happens to have, we had this discussion and I was like, this is perfect. This is the perfect right time. So we're going to dive into this episode today. Here is number 129 with Jenay Rose. Jenay, welcome to the Wander Wealthy Podcast. I am so excited to have you on the show today. We're going to talk about some juicy stuff, but I'd love for you to start off and just share with us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Oh my gosh. First of all, Tess, thank you for having me on. It's such an honor to be here. I'm really excited to chat with you and the listeners today. So a little bit about my story. I was the standard, workaholic. I was in the corporate environment for a really long time, and I was totally depressed, depleted, anxious AF. It was just not the vibe for me. I could not figure out how to fit my square peg into the round hole, if you know what I'm saying. I just couldn't do it. I was really in that people pleaser, comparisonitis mentality. I didn't really feel like I was good at anything. I didn't really feel like I had any passions, but I was doing what I was told to do, right? You go to school, you work hard, you get a job you hate, you work under a boss who doesn't treat you right, all to make ends meet, to go home, fall asleep, do it again the next day, right? I was fired from every job I ever had besides one or two, and probably in a span of 6 corporate years, I maybe had 9 or 10 jobs. So I wasn't really good at keeping a job, not because I wasn't intelligent, not because I didn't have the work ethic, right? but because I didn't understand why no one wanted my ideas. I had all these ideas, right? And no one wanted to hear them because I was on the bottom of the totem pole, but your girl was acting like she was on the top. And that's sort of this like entrepreneurial thing, this little entrepreneur that was inside of me just dying to get out. But I suppressed it for a really, really long time, trying to make myself fit in with, society's expectations and my parents' desires and all these other things. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 7 days before my 27th birthday. And I was like, what am I doing? I, at that point, had a really pretty good job, like in quotes, air quotes, a good corporate safe job, all the benefits, working for the biggest brand in the world, doing sales. And I was killing it. Like I got promoted. With the promotion, I made less money. I got a worse boss. It was just like this whole cluster F. And I was like, this is not what's happening. This is not the life I'm saying. Right? I'm like, and I literally remember having this like inner dialogue of, girl, it is 7 days before your 27th birthday. Are you okay with living this life forever? Because if you don't leave now, you never will. And that was it. I said, F it. I quit. I marched out of that office. They said, you're dead to us. Take your shit and leave. And I drove home and just like bawling, but like tears of like excitement, right? Yeah. I was just like, oh, you did it. Great. Now what are you going to do? I don't know, but you're going to figure it out, right? Because you have something that's pulling you to this other way of life. And at that point, I actually had found yoga the year prior, and I became really involved in the yoga community, and I started teaching yoga. And that led to teaching meditation and mindfulness in corporate environments as well as yoga. And so I was able to kind of make ends meet, again, in air quotes. If you live in LA and you're a yoga teacher, it is hard. It's like you're making $20 an hour and your rent is $3,000 a month. Like it's just wild. And so I knew that wasn't the hustle I wanted. And so that pretty quickly led me to show up on this new platform called Instagram. And I had been sharing my yoga practice. Actually, honestly, I remember thinking, I'm just going to do this Instagram thing so that I can track my progress. Right? Yoga was the first passion. It was like the first thing I felt good at. And then people just started like saying, oh, this is so pose is so amazing, X, Y, and Z. Wow, this journey, just like really relating to the vulnerability and showing up and just being my quirky, funny, weird self. And then I got injured and I decided that I really wanted to dive into the mindset piece of yoga because that really changed everything for me. I became a transformational life coach and then started teaching that online, and people were asking me to coach them, and I got clients, and then I had too many clients. I was like, whoa, I got to make a group program. I feel like that's going to be more freeing for me. And so I launched my first group program, made like $18,000 to $19,000 3 weeks before my wedding in November of last year. And ever since, it's just been like just exploding, expanding in all the best ways. And then all of these incredible heart-centered, impact-driven women were coming to me saying, wait, you took me through this amazing program. Like they went through the program with me and they're like, can you teach me how to do what you do? I want to be a coach too. Right. And this was sort of before, like, I think right at the cusp of when online coaching was becoming like a thing, right? Like give it to Tony Robbins, give it to Gabby. They're like Gabby Bernstein. They're kind of like the OGs of coaching in a digital sphere. And it wasn't so known, or this whole thing, that now I feel like it's a little bit more acceptable and more appropriate, or whatever you want to say. But then that led me into creating the business side of my business right now, which is what I'm teaching, impact-driven, heart-centered women how to create financial freedom online, doing what they love. So that's where we're at now.
Amazing. I love it. I love all the twists and turns too. And I think there's so much that we could dive into here. The one thing that really resonated with me was even your experience in the corporate world. I think like one thing, I haven't talked about this a lot, but when I was in corporate and I went like a very straight and narrow specific path that was going to lead me to like up the corporate ladder, I felt like I was bad at working. Like I wasn't cut out to work. And I was like, am I just like bad at being an employee? Do I not like this? And like, this is what everyone's supposed to do. So how am I supposed to, like, I can't fail at this. And it's so interesting because I never even thought I could just start my own business, right? Like I didn't even think that was an option.
100%. Everyone I knew called me crazy when I quit my job. My parents were like, and my mom cried. She's like, what do you mean? You have to have benefit. I mean, but that's what they're taught, right?
Yeah,
Like people know what they know. And there's never been a better time, especially as a woman, to like start your own business and to do the damn thing. And I knew that like it no longer mattered what anyone else thought because I had tried it their way and I was fucking miserable and I wasn't going to live my life that way. It was like this clear-cut decision of, oh no, I've had enough. I refuse to continue living life this way. And it was scary. It was terrifying. Again, everyone called me crazy. My boyfriend, now my husband, was like, you're batshit, but okay, I support you. Like, go for it, girl.
That's love, though.
Right? Now who's the breadwinner? You know what I mean? Like, it just, things happen. And like, I had this drive. I knew that somehow I was going to make it work, but I was also willing to fail and willing to fail forward. I think that's the thing. A lot of people, they're like, you know, we have these big promises, especially online space, like 6 weeks to becoming a 6-figure entrepreneur. It's like, yeah, you'll learn the infrastructure, but you're going to have to test so many things out, right? You're going to have to figure out what resonates with your audience. You're going to have to figure out what message you want to talk about. All those things take time. And I had just been showing up online a little bit longer before I understood that I wanted to turn this into a business, right? When I first quit my job and I was teaching yoga corporate and like in some studios around the city, and I had like 1 or 2 privates. And so I had like a little bit of a following, maybe like 10 to 15,000 people. And so I was able to do ads when ads first started, right? So that was great money. It was like a few $100 for a photo. I was like, this is great. Okay. So I was able to supplement my income. That's very entrepreneurial, but I didn't know it was, I have multiple streams of revenue. I didn't know that's what it was called. Right. So it's sort of like you have to also be like willing to like get scrappy and kind of like do things that no one else might see. And even if people, you know, calling you crazy, you have to be able to honor that like they're allowed to have their opinion. They're entitled to live life by the rules that they desire for themselves. And just because you don't desire to live that way doesn't mean that it's wrong. It means that it's right for you. And I came to this conclusion that like, because I desire it, not only do I deserve it, but it's part of my life path. It's part of my purpose, and the universe will not let me fail.
That's great. One thing you had mentioned, and this is a big part of what I wanted to talk to you about from me just stalking you on Instagram, let's be real. You had mentioned that the idea that like there's a lot of coaches out there and even just like marketing gurus that are like, here's the 6 steps, 6 weeks to 6 figures, all of that. And we see a lot of, especially if you're in the online space of building an online business, you're probably surrounding yourself with a lot of people who are having success. At least you would think that what they are saying is true, which I'm assuming most people are being truthful about their numbers. And they're just talking about like hitting these amazing multi, you know, whether it's 5-figure or 6-figure launch goals and all of that jazz. And you had a post recently where you had some pictures of you crying and sharing the more of like the deflated side that I think there's, so for every one of the people out there that are like, I made, you know, 5 figures or 6 figures in this launch, there's like hundreds of online coaches who are not hitting the numbers and not getting the people in the door that they really were hoping to get. And I think there's a way to spin this, but I just want to touch on the deflation and kind of more, I don't want to say devastation, but like the discouragement of that and how you deal with that before you overcome and go, okay, I'm going to put my best effort into these people, at least that signed up to work with me. Like, how do you face the disappointment that you might be feeling in that situation?
Absolutely. I think this is such an important topic. I'm so glad that you brought this up. I've always tried to really stay vulnerable and as honest and open and transparent as I can be, right? There are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that like, because of contracts, because of legal documents and representation, we can't really talk about. Like there are things that go on behind the scenes, especially when you get into these multiple 5-figure, 6-figure launches and months and things. And so my most recent launch was the second round of my mastermind, which is, again, heart-centered, impact-driven women. That's really my aligned, the woman that I love to serve, right? You can call it an ideal client if you want, but no, it's the woman that like I want to help have fucking success because she deserves it. And we need more heart-centered people in the world. The world needs more healers. Okay, you are not late. You are perfectly on time. If you're like, I want to be a coach, I want to do that. I want to be a healer, a teacher, a coach, blah, blah, blah. Great. Do it, right? There's still plenty of room. We're just getting started. But for those of you who have had a failure or a deemed failure, right? It's really the attachment to like that goal. But for me, I had to unpack, I really wanted 20 women, right? The first round of GBM, I had 10 women joined. And this round I wanted 20 and I ended up with 15. Right. And so when we're talking in larger figures, that was the difference between $80,000 launch and like a $67,000 launch. Right. Mm-hmm. Which is still a huge fucking number that's what I used to make, more than what I used to make in a year. Right. Right. And my last corporate job. And I made that in a month. So it was insane. It was still a huge success. And I think understanding that it wasn't about me. It wasn't about the fucking numbers. And that's probably why I didn't reach my goal, to be quite honest, because I ended up getting focused and attached and feeling scarce around hitting the goal. Like the goal was the most important thing, not these people, right? And that's okay. Mm-hmm. We all are going to go through these waves where we forget. And as long as you come back and you remember, it's not about hitting the goal of the number. It's about having the perfect people who need the gifts that I'm teaching come into my space, right? And calling them and being able to receive them. And I promise you, the energy that you embody during your launch and before and after has a huge impact in the success of your business, especially if you have you're more in touch with your emotions, right? Mm-hmm. So for those of us who are very empathic and we care a lot, it's easy to get wrapped up in those emotions that might not feel so good. And so for me, that was the switch. It was like, hang on, Jenay, no, take a step back, refocus. This is not about the fucking numbers. You are not that coach, right? There are plenty of them out there and you're not one of them. So stop worrying about that, right? And then I went back to focus of it's about the women. It's about these women who they feel called to serve others, but they don't have the infrastructure, the knowledge, the systems, all that stuff, the strategy in place. And that's what I'm here to teach them and give them because it worked for me. Right. And it's worked for my clients and I can continue getting better and teaching them better and holding space for them better and giving them community and giving them the answers that they need. Right. So that they don't have to spend years and years and years trying to figure it out. That's why you're doing this, not to take money from somebody. Right. And I think a lot of the coaches that are touting that, they're 20 years old with $1 million business, take that in for a sec. Right. Really, let's think about it. You have to really use, I think, caution as well. I've made bad investments too. I know we're going to talk about that. Like I've had failures. I've made bad investments. Every overnight success is 10 years in the making, behind the scenes that you didn't really get to look at.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also hard to share those moments. And I think there's a lot of people who have even the fear, I've been here, where we have the fear to put a program out there because we're afraid no one is going to sign up. And I think I've been more afraid of like 1 or 2 people only signing up than no one. I'm like, if no one signs up, that's fine. I can just not talk about it ever again and walk away. But if 2 people sign up, then I'm like, oh, there's only 2 people in here. And it's really about switching that mindset. And you had posted this in your post. It's like, how cool is it that someone signed up for your expertise and you get to show up and help them? And so you can just pour all of your heart, soul, and energy in working with those 2 people. Those 15 people, those however many people, that even if it's under the goal that you ultimately wanted, it's still a huge deal for them to be able to work with you and an honor to work with you and an honor for you to work with them.
Exactly. It's all about perspective and it's all about priorities in this space. And I think that if you're just doing it for the money or the quick wins, you'll either burn out really fast or you won't build a sustainable, scalable business, right? And you'll have a lot of these failures that you can't overcome. Because you'll get too attached to the numbers. And I've had students come to me who've invested in courses before, didn't get the results that they wanted, right? Launched a program and no one signed up. And I said, okay, let's step back, right? Because there's something here that's not working. So the feedback is the most important piece to look at. So let's put our emotions down for a sec, give yourself a good cry, get it the fuck out, pick yourself back up. It's time to move on, right? Mm-hmm. It's time to look at, really unpack what unfolded here, how we can do it better. And most of the reason that those early programs might not reach the goal or you don't sign up as many people as you want or no one signs up, right? It's because they might not know about the program, right? Like how many times did you really talk about the offer? How many times did you make it more about the client and their pains or the potential client and their problems and the solution you can provide and the expertise and all of these things that really matter and not just like, hey, come sign up for my great thing because it's great and you need it. Okay, well, why do I need it? Who am I, right? Are you really talking to them? Are you really solving a problem? Or did you just create this because you saw someone else created it and you saw it worked for them, so you want to do the same thing, but you haven't spent like the blood, sweat, and tears and time to really cultivate an audience who trusts you, right? Sales is all about trust. all about trust. And I think that's why my first program was an $18,000 launch. I had spent so many years just sharing and building and like giving away free things and like free content, free giveaways, all that kind of stuff, right? I kind of put in the work, not knowing that it eventually would become a business, right? And so it's like, don't look at these big influencers and just like, they did it overnight. Like, yeah, some people do because they understand viral content or, you know, they had some other source or whatever, but like, you don't need a huge following to make money online. You need a engaged community.
Right. And there's so much behind the fact that you can there's obviously a difference between like needing the money just to live and survive. And there's a happiness threshold there. But like beyond that, money doesn't change as much. Like the actual value that you get from your life, from the money that comes in, doesn't change in accordance to the life that you want to live. And I think we lose touch with that when we set goals. But I do find that a lot of people are like, then why set goals? Right? And there's this dance that we have to play of like, it's important to have an idea of what you want, but then not get super wrapped up and take it so personally when you aren't able to hit that. How do you work with your clients on that?
The first thing that I want to say is new level, new devil, right? Like this is something I've learned. Every new level that you hit not only requires a new level of you. So let's say that new revenue goal you want to hit, you're going to have to be a new version of you to be able to hold space and have capacity for that, right? So it's going to be very rare that you're going to start and have that big amount of capacity come in, right? So that $18,000 launch, let's just say, that happened because I had 50 to 60 one-on-one clients and I had a threshold to be able to serve more than one person at a certain time, right? So if you're like brand new, I always suggest one-on-one clients. Start trading your time for dollars and then start building out a client roster and you've got 3 or 4 calls in one day and notice how your energy shifts. And you have to kind of build like that threshold, right, of being able to sustain that. Once you've done that, once you've had 10, 20, 30 one-on-one clients, you're probably ready to create a small group container. And that's absolutely the way and the level and the pace that I suggest going at. It's very irresponsible for us to think, and I've seen this with other programs, and people come to me and I sort of have to recorrect this, is like, if you are a brand new coach, it is irresponsible and actually unsafe to just launch this group container. Maybe if you're a therapist or you've got some like special circumstances behind you, you're really, really skilled, whatever. Okay, but it is such a different situation to hold space and teach multiple people at one time, right? So those group programs are really sexy. They're very sultry. It's like, ooh, a lot of money, great, 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 big launches. It's the whole thing. But think about where you're at and like what really is going to be in best service of the people entering the program. And most likely it's going to be holding space for them one-on-one and really understanding and unpacking who that person is, right? So I had so much experience unpacking who I liked working with, who I didn't like working with, who I wanted to work with, what I wanted to teach them, how I wanted to help them change their lives, the techniques that I loved and was super called to teach, etc. And then all of that information, right? All of that deep, deep market research, packed it into a program. That's why the program was successful, because I'd spent really a lot of time and energy doing that. And I did the program out of necessity, not really desire. It was like, can't hold space for any more one-on-one clients. I'm fucking drained, but I love what I do. And I still want to help these women change their lives. Okay, what's something else I can do? And that came to me. It wasn't something that a lot of people were doing at the time that I was aware of. I didn't know about the whole coaching industry. Probably the only coach I followed was, again, TR and Guy Bernstein. Like, I didn't know that this was a whole thing. And so back to your original question, that's just like a little background of what I will tell my clients. Mm-hmm. But when they say, okay, I have this goal and I didn't reach the goal and now I'm really like destroyed inside, right? It's again, like repurposing and shifting that perception of how can we look at this in a different situation? What's a better belief we can have about this, right? Could it be possible that you weren't just ready? Your heart wasn't really in it and you were really pushing yourself to that goal because of an ego attachment, right? Because of a desire for money, but not really a desire to serve. And there's just so many variables of why that can happen, but like you can still relaunch that thing, repackage it, and have a great experience with it, right? And have a lot of success with it. You're never married to an offer either. Like you never have to only teach one person. You never have to only teach one thing, right? Like you're allowed to grow, you're allowed to up level. And as you do, you have to be willing to pivot.
Yeah. That's really important. And that's something that I wanted to address with you as well, because your story is kind of full of little pivots. Like you started in yoga, went into mindset, went into business. How have you been able to do that while maintaining the connection with your audience? And I think the big kind of opportunity for you was working with Instagram and using Instagram as a big content platform for you. So how were you able to help them pivot along with you, so to speak? Or maybe they didn't. Maybe people dropped off and you got new people. But how did that work for you?
Oh, 100% people dropped off. I remember there was a time thinking that like I was like, okay, I have these, 70,000 followers, but like no one's engaging with me. What's going on here? And then I had to remind myself, you used to post yoga poses all day, every day. And now it's so much more internal, intrinsic life coaching stuff. And those people might not be interested, right? And then I shifted again. And like, here's the thing, you got to give it a good college try. And I see a lot of people, they have one program that doesn't, sell out, that no one buys, and it's like a destroying thing. And then they just want to give up or quit or lose that program and start from scratch, which cool, you can do. Look at the feedback first would be my suggestion. But you have to give it a good try. Right? Like, especially if you're new to this, it's going to take a little time, and that's okay. You're going to learn so much along the way about your capacity and what you desire and what you're here to do and all that good stuff. And so when I pivoted, I remember the biggest pivot for me that was really scary. The first time I pivoted was from yoga right into teaching mindset and a life coach, really, like life coaching, transformational life coaching, etc. And I remember walking in like Venice with a friend who was doing it, and she was having success and she was a coach. And we saw this sign outside of a Pilates studio. And I've never told this story before, actually. This is really interesting. This is coming up. And I was like, Cassie, I don't know what to do. I really want to teach mindset. I'm so passionate about it. I've done so much work on myself. I have all these tools. I got all these certifications, but I'm so scared. What do I do? And she like pointed to the sign and it said $99, 1 month, whatever. And she's like, that's it. She's like, you're going to offer a clarity call for $99. The universe just gave you the price. Because I was like, what am I worth? What do I charge for? Blah, blah, blah. Literally, I went home. I got on stories. I was like, you guys, I'm doing it. I was like, I'm officially calling myself a life coach. I've got the certifications. You all know I've been here. I've been teaching. I've been sharing. And if you want to work with me and you want to heal your anxiety, these are all the things that I've done. These are all of the things that I've healed in myself. I have 2 spots available. Like, it just sort of came naturally in that. Like, I was using scarcity. I was teasing urgency. I was doing those things that I didn't know what they were called, right? So I was like, I just got on there. And I was okay being seen. And I think for new coaches, there's a big fear around being seen, right? So I had kind of like peeled back those layers a long time ago. So it was easier for me to step into that. And then I booked those clarity calls like pretty darn quickly. Like, they were coming and they were turning. And then I was like, okay, so I've got all these people, but how do I get them to recur? Right? How do I get them to keep coming? Because I'm just having them Venmo me, and it was just a shit show, right? But I was still building a business, and that's okay. Like, I didn't know I could go pay someone to teach me how to do it all. And now that's such a thing, right? Because that's what I do. I'm like, hey, you can come and I'll show you what to do, what not to do, how to make it easier on yourself. That doesn't necessarily mean it's easy, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of inner work. It's a lot of showing up. It's a lot of testing and experimenting. But I try to tell my clients, you got to look at it as an experiment. Have to, like, a client of mine who's really new, who has had some bad experience in the past. She like had a friend reach out who wanted to book a call, didn't show up for the call, and was like, she walked all over me. And I'm like, no, we don't use victim mentality if we want to be the authority, right? So what could you have done differently? And I think with new coaches, that's the thing. It's a lot about the mindset of like showing up, being seen, holding your boundaries, right? Being the expert, being the authority, and like really owning that.
Yes.
So then the second time I pivoted was obviously into business coaching, and that was very scary. That one was really scary. I was like, who the F is going to pay me to teach them about business? I don't have a business degree. I have a good college education, right? I've worked at a lot of places, but nobody knows that. And I'm not necessarily like, I don't know all the things about business. I haven't built some big empire, but I know a thing or two. So I started sharing it. I was like, okay, well, Jenay, what have you done? What have you done that would give you the authority? You've built a community without trying, without knowing it, right? You have learned a lot. You've studied. I'm always like ferociously reading and studying all the things that other people probably would not be interested in. And then I'm able to digest that and repurpose it and share it with my audience in a way that it's going to resonate with them. That's the key, right? No information is new. It's the way that we repurpose it and repackage it and share it to our ideal client. Because I'm not necessarily the ideal client of that thing that I was learning, that school I went to, that X, Y, and Z, right? But I utilize that information. So that's sort of how I pivoted, and new people come, right? New people come, old people go. I released it. I had no more expectation of like, you have to follow me. Why are people not following me? It became more of like, no, I'm just going to share. I'm going to serve. The people are going to find me.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said there's no new information. I definitely agree with that. I've fought with my fiance a lot about that. But I'm like, you think you have unique ideas, but they're not that unique. And I think that's a big fear for a lot of coaches breaking into the industry or looking to pivot or looking to add, something to their repertoire is like, well, so-and-so already teaches this and I don't want to like copy them. And yes, don't copy, but a lot of what you can say and share around that topic, like some people can't even comprehend what some person might be talking about. Let's use finance, like money stuff. If you boil it down, it's pretty easy, but like it gets overly complicated, and you could pick up a finance textbook and read it. I'm essentially regurgitating that just in a way that makes sense for people. And I don't feel bad about the fact that I'm teaching something that you could have learned in Finance 101 in college. And some people did take it and still, like, it doesn't sink in. It didn't sink in for me. I had to learn it through experience because it definitely doesn't work the way the college system works. And so, like, all this information comes to us and we're all hearing it, and there's like finally that teacher, right? What's the phrase that like the teacher will show up when the student is ready, and they're the person who
is ready to teach their peers. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And they're the one that can explain the concept and can allow that information to sink in because they know how to help it resonate with you.
100%. It's all about that person's ideal client is not going to be the same as your ideal client, because someone that resonates with me might not resonate with you, and someone that resonates with you might not resonate with me, and maybe someone will resonate with both of us, and that's super cool, but like that might not be the person I want to teach. That might be the person you do want to teach. Mm-hmm. So it's like we have to understand that your value is in your unique ability to process things, and your unique ability is your gift. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like we all have gifts.
I was going to take us down the path, which we do not have time, but the idea that, I think other people's fear is just that, oh, the market is too saturated. And it's like, but there are so many people that need to hear it from you as opposed to someone else. It's like, I heard this comparison about if anybody who wanted to open a restaurant thought like, well, there's too many restaurants. The restaurant market is so saturated. It's like, but you make food that certain people like maybe you're an Italian restaurant and all the people who like Italian are going to go there compared to the people who like Mexican. Like you got to just provide your flavor.
Yeah, that is ego. That is fear. That is projection. And that's okay, right? Like if you're not willing to step into a market like that, then it might not be the right market for you. And that's okay too, right? Just because everyone else is doing it and it looks really cool, go inward, like listen in, because it has nothing to do with if it's worked for me or if it's worked for you, right? It's like, if it isn't going to work for the girl listening, if she doesn't feel called to do it deep in her soul and her intuition isn't like, hey, isn't saying, screaming, I want to show up online, I want to do this thing, I want to be seen, you might be better behind the scenes working for a coach who wants to be in the front, right? There's so many different arenas that you can be in, right? I have an online business manager. She makes a full friggin' salary. You know what I mean? And she's epic, but she doesn't want to be at the front. She doesn't want to be the face. She shines in supporting me and doing all the digital cool things in the background. Like that's her passion, right? And so I think it's like less about what everyone else is doing and more about what your soul is calling you to do. And it might take you a couple fail forwards to figure it out. The market is not oversaturated. We're just getting started.
Absolutely. Okay, one last question before we go into the money round, which is I just have to know how you maintain the energy and ability to constantly show up. I'm pretty sure every day, or at least almost every day. And you're also sharing a lot of information, a lot of like basically online little mini trainings for people every single day. How do you maintain that level of energy and even just ability to get on Instagram every single day, live, stories, whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of content is batched, right? With the exception of stories are going live. So captions, quotables, things like that, photos. I do one photo shoot every like 2 months with my photographer. So that stuff is batched. And then I work on, when I show up on stories, it's like my way of connecting with my community. Right? Like, I don't look at myself as like this influencer or whatever, that I'm like the head of this community. And there's a lot of that vibe. There is a lot of ego in the industry. For me, it's like we're all here and it's my duty to help share what I know in a way that someone can receive it at kind of that level, right? Like, I'm not going to give everybody the cow for free, so to speak. I'm not going to be able to like teach you all the things, but I can give you enough where you feel really taken care of. And in exchange, like, at some point you might want to reciprocate that. You might want to get into a container, right? Every person who's in your audience is going to need a different offer. Like, some people really resonate when I share my Google Calendar. Some people really resonate when I talk about my relationship with my mom, right? So I think it's all about knowing your ideal client, knowing the person you're here to serve and support and who's in your community, and constantly engaging them with things that they need to know, things that they need to hear. And if you're asking, well, how do I do that? Market research, polls, communication. I respond to every freaking comment on every post. Like, I know people with 20,000 followers who don't do that shit. And to me, it's a priority. I'm like, I want to be connected to my audience. And I think that's going to take me really far. And I do it because it's part of the service. It really is like part of the passion, getting to like really see and connect with the person. Like, there's a person on the other side of that damn screen. You know what I mean? Like, forget the vanity metrics, forget the likes, the comments, whatever. If I can teach someone something that's going to help them go farther, and the only exchange that I want is that makes me feel good, how dope is that? Who am I to keep that from them, right? But then again, there is that level of like boundaries of like, I'm not going to coach you for free in the DMs. Don't ask, because I'll send you one of my programs, or I'll share with you an offer that I have. But when people message you, taking that opportunity to have a conversation, when people DM, taking that opportunity to have a conversation. And I also keep a running list. I shared this the other day. I keep a running list of questions that people ask me on Instagram, right? Or feedback I get, or questions and polls and all those sorts of things. I keep a list of that shit because it's gold, okay? If I could give you guys one amazing tool to implement into your business, it's like, speak the language that your ideal client can hear you in. And that means like, if they're asking you a certain question, answer that question, because it means that it's valuable for them, right? And if you're solving their problems, not only are you starting a business and starting a movement, but that's how you're going to have success financially and fulfillment-wise.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
We're going to go into the money round.
Woo.
The question I ask everyone is just to kind of pull back the curtain and explain to us, how do you make money? How does your business bring in income? And like, in what form does that look like for you? And then how do you spend it and save it? But don't worry about that. Everyone's always like, what's the other one? Just how do you make money right now?
For sure. So group containers, right? So my first program was Your Own Healing. That was like $1,500 to $2,000. That I haven't run. I'm going to run it again next year because I'm feeling really called to do it. After that, I created the Confidence Masterclass, which has actually been one of my most successful programs. And it was like under $500, right? But it ended up being really powerful. And it was something I felt called to create. And that is like 4 to 8 modules. And then I have my current program right now that we're in, which is Goddess Boss Mastermind. That is my highest level container right now. That's 90 days to creating the infrastructure and systems and strategy, learning how to launch and sell and do all those things. Basically create a business online using social media as the forefront. So you're learning all the content creation hacks, all that good stuff. And that's $4,000, $6,000 for VIP. And so those are the 3 largest containers, the largest group programs. I do one-on-one VIPs. I do 2 one-on-one VIPs a month. And they're paying anywhere from probably around $3,000. And those pretty much always sell out. So that's another stream of revenue. And then I do mini launches. So I've done mini IG bio audits. And I did that and I made a couple $1,000 because maybe 15 people signed up and it was only $100. So I'm always testing to see okay, is it going to be really much better for me to create a lower end offer? But not that many people signed up. So You know what I mean? I have this thing where it's like people who pay attention. The more you pay, the more you're going to pay attention, the better results you're going to have. And so for me, the higher ticket option has worked really well. Right now, I'm in the process of creating another group program to really build out my whole product suite, which is a sales program, which is going to be fire. I'm like so stoked about it. I love sales. I'm a nerd. It's awesome. And that's going to be around like 1997 mark. So that'll kind of be in the middle. And I'm going to plan out kind of next year what I'm going to do. Probably going to do some like lower end offers as well. But it's all about, again, testing the market, seeing what works. But those live programs turn into modules, and they can turn into evergreen products that you either run forever, all the time, keeping them open-ended, which I don't really do. I like launching, or you have them launch at a specific time. And that runway, right? Like I made about $67,000. I had about a $70,000 month last month in my business, and that will sustain me to grow, right? To pay for the podcast, to hire new team members. We just hired, we're now at a team of 4, plus a copywriting company, right? So that allows me to build out that infrastructure and hold and tide me over with my bills and all that stuff until the next launch. And so the next launch desired would be 6 figures, but again, it's all about serving. So that's a little bit about like behind the scenes of kind of how we're creating income. But you guys, I started making $99 for an hour. Just keep that in mind, you know?
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
A year ago. First group program launched 1 year ago.
Amazing. That is amazing that you've been able to scale it that fast. On a personal note, what do you spend your money on?
That's a good question. Honestly, rent. I live in LA. We pay a mortgage. Our rent is extremely expensive. It's like $4,000 a month for like a 2-bedroom home in Marina, but it makes me feel abundant and I love it. I invest in my team. I invest in myself a lot. And yeah, I'm not a big like Chanel purse kind of gal. I have a nice car that I love to drive. Yeah, that's about it. I'm not a huge spender. I'm like really right now I'm in this like stay slim and slender in the finances and do that thing. Yeah.
I find that building a business is a really good way to distract yourself from spending money because you're just like, I don't need anything. I'm just going to stay inside in my pajamas all day.
Spending money. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, right? New level, new devil. Okay, sure. It sounds great to make $70,000 a month, but like think about the operating fees. So of that, right? So for me, it's important to keep those operating fees to stay like quote unquote slender in the business. Cause I know people who they had their first 100K month, but they probably spent $60,000 of that operating their business. Right. So for me, it's my profit margin is more important right now than the revenue, if that makes sense to everyone. So it's like the revenue is how much you bring in. The profit is how much you actually keep and make.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Any big money mistakes that you've made in your business? I know you said like investing mistakes have definitely happened. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. I made some really, really bad investments before. And actually, they were pretty recent. Like the start of this year, I was told about this coach who was super magical and whatever, and ended up getting in the program, and it was a fucking super cult. And I was just like, this is not right. And I canceled my PayPal. And I asked for a refund, they wouldn't give it to me. That's how you know someone is out of their, like, not operating out of soul. But I learned a lot about the type of coach I didn't want to be. I was hiring a social media company, signed a contract with them. They asked me to pay in full upfront using an app. Stupid, don't do it. And it was total scam, right? I was like scammed out of like $1,000 and I was like, what? I was like, how did that even happen? You're supposed to be smart. But I was just like, go, 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 right? Not taking a sec to breathe. So I've totally made bad decisions, but you have to look at it as a learning curve.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. In brief terms, because we did not get to this, can you tell us a little bit about your money story and how you grew up around money and how that's shaped your relationship with money today?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I have a typical Jewish mother. We were raised in like this penny pinching mentality. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is really hard to come by. You have to work really hard to make ends meet. Those were the stories. And so I didn't spend money on myself until I was probably like out of the house, maybe like 21, 22. I think I got my first manicure. And I saw that like my mom would take me to do that stuff, but it wasn't a thing where it was like, yeah, take care of yourself. You deserve it, right? It was like, oh, it's $5 extra for the tip. You know, it's just like that kind of energy. And that's okay because that's their stories, and familial wounds are a real thing, and societal wounds and all that stuff, lineage. And so I had to work really hard on accepting the fact that I was worthy of investing in. And I think the first investment I ever made was, I think, in like Gabby's program, and it was like $2,000. And that was a lot of money for me. And I was really scared. Like that was double my rent at the time. And I was terrified. But like I just kept going and kept doing it and kept saying it's okay. And then I started to realize like, oh, I don't really miss the money. And just because I spend the money doesn't mean it's gone, right? It's going to return to me in value. It's going to return to me in growth. It's going to return to me in profitability in my business, X, Y, and Z. You have to really shift that money story of understanding like you have to bless that money when it goes out so that it can come back tenfold.
Mm-hmm. I've been really thinking about this concept lately because a lot of people are always asking me, when is the best time to invest? And this can be like literally investing in the markets or investing in yourself and building a business and whatever. And even just like the investment of taking the leap and building a business. And it's the idea that like money can always come and go. So if the exchange of money, if spending the money, if investing the money, if like, you know, having it leave your account and go wherever, even if it's your other account that is to be invested in the like stock market, but you know, we all have our things. If that is the action that you're scared of, know that money can always come back. The thing that you can't get back is time. Mm-hmm. And when you can invest earlier, you are able to leverage this one invaluable resource that you have the most of right now. And you can do so much with that. But like the longer you wait, the less time you have to either get your money in the markets or get your money in this coach who's going to help you get to that level, or even just like, you know, I don't want to tell everyone to just leave their job without a plan, but the earlier you leave it, if it's making you unhappy and you just can't sustain it, and you start putting yourself out in the world to do other things, to create value in other ways, the more time you have to figure it out and to grow that. So anyway, just felt called to share.
Yeah, I always say quickly that the job of a coach is to compress time on someone else's journey, right? So I did the whole squiggly line, which is really long and scary and dangerous and confusing and lonely, and I can take you this straight arrow. Mm-hmm. Right? That's really the job of a coach. It's collapsing time, of a good coach, a coach that gets you results, right? It's like we collapse time on the journey so that you don't have to waste time screwing around. Doesn't mean it won't take some time, right? But it'll compress it for sure. It'll turn decades of strife into like months of hard work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, we're going to go into the quick and dirty Q&A. These are some fast-paced questions, hopefully, to wrap up the show. So we'll start with the first one. It's my favorite one. Everyone wants to make it about business. You are not allowed to make it about business. What is one totally random thing that you can't stop thinking about lately?
Creation of making ideas stick. Is that about business? Just in general, like how do things become fallacies? How do things become stories in our world? Like, right, like all of these like old sayings, how does that all happen? Like that's the stickiness. Like I've been thinking about that for a long time. Yeah, is that weird?
No, I think that's amazing.
That's a lot.
Your favorite person or account to follow on social media?
It's a hard one. I'll give a shout out to my girlfriend, Shannon Monson. She's a doll, and she's really interesting and a good thinker, and has a lot of cool like viral content that makes you feel good.
Cool. The most life-changing book that you've read?
Jeez Louise. Return to Love, Marianne Williamson.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How do you get out of work? How do you differentiate yourself, Jenay, from the business that you've built? What do you do?
Screenless time, like no screen, screenless walks, hanging with my dog, beach, book. I got to decompress from the digital atmosphere where everybody kind of wants something at some point, whether they mean it in a good way or a less than a good way. Like most people mean it a good way, but I got to detach. I got to that's where most of my good ideas come from, is like without my phone.
Best piece of financial advice you've been told that you would like to pass along?
Saving is beautiful. It doesn't have to be a scarce idea. I have to save. I have to pack my nuts for winter. Winter is coming. It doesn't have to be this like scary thing. I think that actually a lot of when I was young, all of those stories of like save really ended up helping me and getting me ahead later in life. And so put some money away. You should definitely be putting money away with love and tender care and knowing that it's there and it's going to compound on itself.
Jenay, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've just gone deep and it was so much fun. And so I want to thank you for sharing all of your goodness and being so wise with us and even giving us some hard truths. We love it. Tell us where we can find you so we can continue to follow along with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me over on Instagram every single day at Namaste Jenay. I'm sure you'll link it in the show notes for everyone.
Yes.
And you can find my podcast at Align Your Life on Spotify, iTunes, and anywhere podcasts are found.
And that's a wrap. Episode 129 with Jenay Rose. I hope you guys loved this episode. If you want to get at all the resources and goodies that she shared and I shared in this episode, go to wanderwealthypodcast.com/podcast/episode 129. I'll also be linking up lots of stuff in the description of this podcast episode. Now, before I let you go, I just want to say, if you are loving the Wander Wealthy podcast, I would love it if you could share it on Instagram, but also if you listen on iTunes, go ahead. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? But also leave a rating and a review. This really helps the podcast get noticed. It helps it come up in the ranks of the podcast world, and it allows us to expand our community even more. So if you would do me a solid, even if you listen on a different outlet, go over to iTunes on your desktop or in your phone. If you have an iPhone, open it up, search for Wander Wealthy, and go ahead and leave the podcast a rating and review. It's going to help me out a ton, and I am forever grateful to you. The last thing I want to share is I do have low-key one personal finance coaching spot left and one business finance coaching slot left before the end of the year. Things have been filling up fast. I got rebooked out almost, and now I'm like, okay, I have 2 more spots left, one for personal, one for business. And if you want to grab them, go to wanderwealthy.com, go to the Work With Me tab, and then if you're traditionally employed, you'll go for the personal finance route. If you are self-employed, if you run your own business, you'll go the business finance route. You can read the webpage there, but most importantly, fill out an application and sign up for a discovery call, and we will get on the phone and talk about how we can make 2020 the best year yet. So go ahead, it's a free, no strings attached 30-minute discovery call, fill out the application, and I cannot wait to talk to you. All right, my loves, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me on another wonderful podcast episode, and until next time, I hope you wander wealthy.